Welcome to the Q&A and Critique number 40, which is quite a big number. It's just 13 weeks off a whole year. So we're currently here today with some good friends of ours. We've got Andy, Darren, Slinc, Sid, and Yush. Thanks guys for joining. Thanks for being here the whole time. I highly appreciate it. So today we're going to take it a little bit easy. Hopefully we can finish within the next hour. We have two pieces by Slinc to take a look at. One is a rig, which I'm really looking forward to get my hands on. Rumor has it that there is a dynamic widget on the rig based on the aperture eye of a robot. And he also has one of his best pieces of art at the moment, a wood cabin in a forest. And on top of that, I'm going to give you guys a quick update of the Painterly project. And we're going to walk through and continue going through the lessons in a more of a practical hands-on sense of visual grammar or language. So I found a very excellent video recommended by my brother, Teleporte, and he has kind of opened up my mind a little bit to that concept, which just fits in with the 3D Painterly project. So give me a shout out in the voice chat or into the Q&A and critique thread, and I'll read out your comments. And if you want to go live, well, open up your microphone. This is an open mic, so feel free. And let's have some fun. So Slinc, how are you today?
Doing good.
Excellent. Let me just turn you up a moment. Now let's take a look at your piece. So would you like the art piece to take a look at first, or would you like me to take a look at your rig first?
Whatever you like.
Okay. I will take a look at the art. So here we have the art piece right here. Just looking very nice. Let me just load up Krita. So guys, those of you who are here and watching on the stream, what do you guys think?
I think it looks pretty good.
Pretty good, yeah.
Yeah, pretty solid. I really like the trees and the leaves, especially in the way the sun hits them.
I agree, right? It's really nice up at the top there.
Yeah, that's actually, I think that draws like all of my attention actually. So that may be some sort of a critique, but it is such a nice part of the frame that I find myself looking at that the most.
That's an excellent point, and actually it's an excellent segue to the next topic of visual language, or grammar. But yeah, you have a good point. It's very bright up there, and it draws the eye to this kind of V shape as well, with the high contrast of light with the shadow. I have to say, Slinc, yeah, Darren?
I was going to say something dorky. You know, in a character, the eyes are always the issue because eyes are the secret of the soul, or acting, or blah 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 blah. For a house, I want to know where the door is, and the door isn't. There's no like place to go. There's no the invitation. It feels like I have to struggle to find the door, and maybe that works. Maybe that doesn't work for me. I don't feel like there's an entrance to the house, I think is probably the way I would phrase it. And so it has a more of a, I don't know if the word is monolithic kind of feel, which, you know, if that's what you're going for, that's the feel that I got.
All right, it's a little bit legible. There is a door actually, like if we zoom in, there is a door here to the left.
Yeah, I thought the door was a little, like you lose it because it's so dark, it kind of blends in with the cabin there. And there could be like some contrast or whatever, but the grass is like perfect. Like I'm like, I could just touch that. It looks so real. That's impressive.
Is that from your pack, Slinc?
Yes,
Available for
it is
free
from
on
my pack.
Gumroad.
Like the way that you've got like the yellows on yeah, it's great. Great.
Yeah, I have to commend that. Your foliage is looking excellent. The trees, the materials on the foliage, the way you distributed the grass, the way the grass looks. Nicely done. The ivy may need some leaves pointing downwards a little bit, but and that's fine. These are all excellent comments, guys. Thank you, everyone. All right, so the points that we had a look, like this contrast of the light in the tree, this here, is an excellent point. The kind of the monolithic shape is really interesting. The grass is really nice, a really nice shape of grass. And the general quality of the render and the lighting of the orange into the trees is really, really nice as well. That's really good. So concerning some constructive critique, someone mentioned that the first focal point is up here in the light. And the second focal point is kind of hidden, like this hidden door is having a hard time. So I'm going to switch it to red just to point out the things that are difficult, like this part of the story is a little bit hard to read, and the eye focuses more on this high contrast point than it does here. So in this case, the image is an excellent image still. Like, this is probably one of your best pieces that we've reviewed here to the date. Well done, Slinc. And also welcome, Plebes and Shackman.
Thank you.
So I think with your free asset pack for nature, with your piece, this is a really awesome showcase. But now this comes to the next point of visual language. So Darren, do you think you can give me the honors of reminding us what we talked about last week, quickly?
Yes, some subject, some verb, some object, or some grammar or structure. And I'll set Andres up. The palm is the story, the complement, and the five fingers of the who, what, when, where, why, and how come together. How'd I do? Was that a good setup?
Yeah. This is excellent. And what else?
That they're the one of the things that we didn't really touch on much was tension or some sort of the subject is doing something. What is the
message?
Oh, the message. Yes. What's the takeaway? Yes.
All right, good. So I wanted to expand on that. Like, this is going to help you, Slinc, in this regard concerning your composition and art and how you work your lighting. So I'm going to also use my Painterly project here with my trusty camera. I got a little wooden character going on. Yeah, I've got a little couch set up. I have the Painterly effect all ready to be used with the lighting and the painting and everything that we need. Already set up so that we can play around and work on the actual composition and different rules for the, well, not rules, guidelines. So there's a video that I shared in the thread here inside of Q&A&Critique 40. If you take a look, this video here is called Visual Language. It's a 10-minute video by Marco Bucci, who's a very excellent concept artist and painter, and also a blender user with the grease pencil. He's very good. And my brother recommended him to me, and this is the second of the series. The first one was mostly talking about merging detail, making sure your blobs are very clear concerning the concept, which is kind of a segue towards what I'm going to explain to you now. So he has 4 pillars of language, right? So you have a message. That's the thing that you need to talk about, right? The first thing you need to think about language is that you're trying to communicate an abstract message, like an email or like a chat in the Discord, or like a sentence or a little book or a little essay or a conversation. You're trying to communicate a message. It's all about communication. And as an artist, The visual language is about what you want to say. And with that, the message is always about what you want to say. Who do you want to express? Or where is the situation? Or when is it happening? How and why? What you just said, Darren. So that just clarifies last week in a very simple way. We're trying to communicate a message. And with that, we have the different types of shots, and we have the different types of composition, and then we have the different types of visual language. So Marcobucci, he kind of explained it into 4 concepts: direction, contrast, a focal point, and the message. So we just covered the message. So now we need to think about the focal point. So in your image, Slinc, we have this house is the focal point. And I just wanted to ask you guys, how much time do you think we have concerning focus and attention? Like, how long does it take for us to lose focus on something? How does the human brain focus?
Yes.
Yes? Not a lot of time or a lot of time? Are we very focused?
I would say like sub 5 seconds.
Sub 5 seconds.
Yeah. If I can't figure everything out, and like if my brain can't figure everything out in 5 seconds, then it's already moved on, I feel like.
That's actually pretty close. The scientific number for a focus is about 8 seconds. So you're pretty much right, 8.6 or something like that. So 5 milliseconds is Shade Snoop. All right. I also said mentions down here in the bottom right of the image. We have this. That's where the unicorn spawns. So that's kind of funny. So in this case, we have about 5 to 8 seconds to capture the person into the image and to read the image. And to do that, we need to make sure that there is one focal point. So I'm going to hide these drawing points. So if we take a look at like what he was recommending inside the chat here, or in Marcobucci, he kind of split up into 4 columns, which is like, don't effing cheat me. Like, make sure there's a direction, make sure there's contrast, make sure there's a focal point, and make sure there's a message. And to do that, we're going to focus on the focal point. We're going to go backwards. We've got the message. The message is basically, if we go back to the image, your message is to communicate that there is an abandoned cottage in the middle of the woods, and it's surrounded by warm light, but the cottage is in the shadow, right? So it's kind of an abandoned, warm situation, but it's like a testament of an old golden era, maybe. You have a little message you want to communicate, right? Now you got to focus on the focal point. So if we make a new layer, the focal point is obviously what you want is this house, right? This is your focal point. This obelisk of an old, that's the building. So that's the thing we need to look at. So the next thing after that, you need to think about direction. So you got your direction, you got your focal point, and all of this is good. You've got the lines that lead, kind of like a V shape into the house. Great, that's awesome. But now the next thing we need to think about is called contrast. So what is contrast to you?
The difference between light colors and dark colors.
That's right. So if we make this image black and white, like this, and we're going to also add another, I guess you could say a blur, I guess you could say almost like a Gaussian blur. If we take a look at this image from afar like this, and we take a look at the thumbnail that we have here, you can easily, or you can start to see the image has some difficulties understanding what's happening. So if I grab like this yellow color so you guys can have a look, we have this shape here, right? This is the light shape. And then we have this very dark shape here, right? All of this here and this part here is very dark. So this is where you need to start to work on your contrast. So contrast is kind of like, okay, it can work in multiple different ways. If you look at the video of Marcobucci later, which I highly recommend, the whole series. Really
Okay.
good. When you think of contrast, contrast is not just light and dark, but it can be a number of different things. It could be a contrast between, like, yeah, light and dark. It could be far away and close. It could be a big shape with lots of small shapes, which is what you have. It could be a square shape with a lot of round shapes. Or it could be one round shape with many square shapes. Or it could be lots of detail, rough detail with smooth detail. It could be something that's out of focus and one thing in focus, like blurry. It could be a textured along with plain shapes with lots of flat texture. Or it even could be a line of direction. You have some things going up one direction, and there's this one shape that is breaking the rhythm. So contrast is kind of like A versus B, pretty much. A is the one that you're supposed to look at. B is everything that's uniform. Because this is how we focus on things with our brain. Out of all the things that we see in the bushes or everything that we see in the sky or around us, everything that's happening, our eyes focus on one particular thing at a time. And it will focus on the one thing that is most important to us. Is it dangerous? Is it friendly? Is it good food? Is it my baby? Is it the person?
Dog.
Yeah, is it my dog, right? So we're supposed to focus on something, and this thing needs to stand out. So we need to help the brain to help us focus on that one thing very quickly by making it stand out by contrast. Am I a dingo, and is it your baby which looks like good food? Is it? That's funny.
Maybe it is good food.
Yeah.
I think that's a funny comment, but also it's very true. I mean, animals, our evolution, are all about finding contrast extremely quickly because it means the decision between life and death. And, we call it discrimination, but the point being that some light or some contrast or some sharpness or all the different variations that you talked about, it is totally hardwired into our brain. So let's use it.
That's right. So this is how we start to play with some things. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new layer, and I'm going to use an airbrush, and I'm going to use this thing called lightness, luminosity. I'm going to grab the airbrush, or just any brush. This one, I guess. I'm going to start painting in some light. So in this case, what you could do is you could use the concept of lightness of your sunlight around the entire world to start bringing out the idea of your cottage so that we look at the cottage first. Not up here in the sky and the trees, far off in the image, but we look at the cottage. We can also, for example, bring out the general shape of the foreground, that it's a little bit more in the light to show out the monolithic concept of the actual building. And if we really want, we can bring out the concept of a really big hero, which is the door, right here. The door is got a very light design that's coming out, and this is what brings out what we're supposed to look at. So the big white part of the door is inside of a dark contrast to bring out the shape. Or we could do the same here. There's a light coming out from the door. It's an abandoned building, but there's some strange light inside the abandoned cottage, surrounded by the magical golden forest of the sunlight. But if you block out your general colors and shape of contrast, you can have a general idea. So what you did correct, for example, with the rest of the image here, like for example, the building, you have straight lines. Let me just change this to another pen. You have straight lines versus dots. And I think this is a really good texture contrast versus little blades, right? Little textures. That's great. You did this perfectly fine. Now you just need to think about creating the general shapes of your 3D to work with the correct contrast. So you have a focal point. Good. You have lines pointing towards it. Excellent. You have a message. Beautiful. You have a general, you have focal point, lines, and a message. Now you just need to focus on improving your contrast. And that is a concept of developing that idea of like, okay, so abstraction of light, abstraction of shapes, abstraction of, and then from that abstraction of making like a big black blob with a little white blob on top of everything else, this can give you an idea that we have an actual thing that we're supposed to look at within the whole entire image. And this would give you, my eyes would directly go to the interesting part, which is relevant to me. So Sid asks a question. Could you also simply change the angle of light of where it comes so that it hits the door? Correct. You can.
Yes.
Yeah, of course. This is the cool thing.
It's a sky texture.
Yeah.
Proceduralism.
Yeah, exactly. That's the power of 3D. Unlike 2D art, where I would have to repaint absolutely everything to change the light and to reshape the composition, in 3D, I can just rotate the light. And this is where things become interesting. 3D allows us to have infinite amount of detail, almost, in the image, but if we don't have the proper intention of our images, then we're going to have a hard time developing or compositing our image here. So let's do some practice, yeah? What do you guys think? Is it clear, basically, what contrast is?
Yeah, like the examples.
Excellent. Well, as homework, I do recommend you watch the video by Marcabucci. He understands a lot better than me. But let's see if we can translate it to 3D. So first things first, we need a message. Here in this image here, we have a man and we have a chair. I guess we can have a couple of balls that we can remove. We don't need them. And we have a background on a canvas. We have a painting with a little bit of a vignette, right? So my question to you is, what type of message do we want to give? From last week, do you guys remember the different types of shots that we have per different types of context or messages? Do you remember what we talked about last week from here? With the extreme close-up, the cutaway, the medium shot. Sid remembers a little bit. The American shot. Things like that. Okay, so I guess we can make a quick little story concerning animatics. And we're going to start working on the composition and the lines and the curves and the leading edges and things like that. So here's my little feedback for this image. Now we can take a look here in the practicality. So as a long shot, we can establish where are we? Where are we in this world? We can establish a contrast of the actual world. So in the world, we're going to need a couple of things, right? So let's zoom, not zoom out, zoom in. Where is the character? We're going to need a room. Okay, and this room is going to need pretty much a ground, right? A floor. So let me just move this up a bit. And let's just quickly make the floor a color. So the message of this is I need to explain where are we and what are the elements of this particular room. If I have like a small room like this, and I just rotate it like this with a wall, roughly like that, and create another wall, and rotate it around to the side here. Now let's just merge everything together. Add in a couple of modifiers, like that is a subdivision modifier, and make it simple. And then I want a solidify and a displacement modifier to make it smoothish, like this. And then maybe do another bevel modifier, and then a smooth modifier. There we go. Smooth shade it, and give it in the correct material, and use my little add-on to prepare it for the Painterly. There we go. Just set up some basic UVs. There we go. And now that we have some basic UVs, I can go here. And the UV seam, just make sure it's painted, I think, black. No, I think it's white. Okay, cool. So if this is my room, I could start going into the world and thinking about contrast. So because I have my room ready here, I can start thinking, okay, so if my character is yellow, what is the opposite color of yellow on the color wheel? Can you guys remember?
It's purple, right?
Blue, actually.
Like red. Oh,
It's blue. So yellow, the opposite is blue. So in the color wheels, this concept of the color wheels of contrast is kind of like, okay, so if we have yellow, the opposite complementary color would be blue. If we have pink, the complementary color would be green. Or we could do a triadic complementary color where if it's yellow, we could have light blue and dark blue, or a cyan and a purple with yellow for a nice contrast. Or we could keep it homogeneous and focus on texture. And if the character is yellow, we could focus on kind of a yellowish green or an orange. Or if it's orange, we could have a yellow and a red and then focus on shape to get contrast. Or luminance, darkness and lightness. So in this case, I'm going to just make it blue. Make it very clear that the background is blue and he is yellow. So obviously that starts to shape out the character almost immediately. But we still need something else in the world, right? We need contrast, okay. And we need to explain, where is he? Maybe he's in the lounge. So in this case, okay, so we have the world, we have the Painterly effect, we have the lounge, but we probably need to bring this in a bit closer to kind of focus on the texture. So here we take a look closer at the camera, we got a very fine texture of paint here, but in the background is very blobby. But we can make it even more blobby if we bring it in a little bit. Whoops. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring in this like post effect, like this. I'm going to increase the density in my custom properties that I created. And also make it the particles larger. Whoops. Maybe it's a bit too much. There we go. Pull it back a little bit. But we don't really need it because the shape is already there. So what else can we do to improve the contrast of the shot and also the context in the message? Well, we need the little couch, right? Let's find the couch.
What?
Yeah?
Okay, so this is just an old robot. Looks like he looks old, just the way his body's posed, I guess. Like, you know, I don't know young people who walk like that unless they're drunk. Anyway, but so he's just gonna go rest his bones in this chair. Is that the story here? Is that what we're?
Maybe he is, yeah. That would be the message.
Okay, so his texture is kind of rough, and you've got this texture. Like, I love the painterly texture and stuff, but it's also like you have a similar texture on the wall. So what I would have done if you want more contrast is make it sort of like smooth and not so random, not so painterly, I guess. Like, it's beautiful, I love it, but if you want to have a contrast, you're asking for a contrast, like I would do completely different, something completely different, where the man is like, or the robot has a lot of straight lines. You might want to make the background have a lot of circles or something, like a wallpaper with circles, something that's clean. And yeah, like the contrasting colors, that's good. If you wanted, like, that's my opinion. I don't know.
All right, that's good.
Does that make
So in this case, we could use a more of a circle-y shape, is what you're talking about. Or a more blurry shape in the background.
Well, less, because where his colors are, they're not clean and defined. Like he's got, you know, the colors on him, like he doesn't look like there's broken lines on him, right? And the colors
He looks weathered.
weathered, yeah. So yeah, that's a good word. And now you've got these walls that look sort of weathered, or you know, they've got the brush strokes on them as well. So I would use a different, like I would,
Different texture.
yeah,
Wow.
just a
Like
different,
a fresh coat of paint.
like a fresh coat of paint, or just like if you have a rusted item in a brand new modern apartment, like think of like if you're looking at architecture magazines or something and you see this apartment of like it's on like a maybe a penthouse apartment so you can see the sky, it's all like new modern glass, white, whatever, right? Like it's all like that, it's all new and clean and modern, and you've got this old rusted, dented, damaged robot. Like there's, do you see the contrast there? Like one's like new and shiny and the other one's old and rusted. And then you would,
All right.
I don't know if that
I'm
makes
not sure
sense.
how I
Like
would do it
that's,
with the brush strokes though. I would have to use a
well,
completely
that's what I'm
different
saying.
brush.
Like you wouldn't necessarily use brush strokes. Is that you, like,
Yeah.
I don't, if you're tied to the brush strokes, then
There's not much I can do
um
there. Okay,
yeah.
so tell you what. I'll get these instances and I'll make them rounder. And bring it in.
Can you make them, sorry.
Can I make them what?
Maybe I'm missing something. Sorry, someone came to my door, so I had to walk away for a bit. So maybe I'm.
No, it's a good point.
Andres, can you go back to your 6 different types of contrast, the examples that they used?
Yeah, sure. If you go into the chat, you can see them as well. Let me just
Oh
bring it
yeah,
up.
there are 7 there.
So there's
So if
lightness and darkness.
Oh, okay.
There is a contrast of lightness and darkness. Texture and non-texture, that's the one you're talking about right now. Like he's very textured and old, so everything else should be smooth. There's a big shape and lots of small shapes, which is similar to what Slinc did. There is uniformity concerning shape design around everything, so there's a whole bunch of square things, and then the thing we're supposed to look at is the round thing, which is also your contrast, like something is new and the other one's old. There's also a polished effect of, for example, this is later on in the video, but he draws like a really high polished apple here, while everything else is scratchy. So there's the finished aspect and the not so finished aspect, which is similar to depth of field in 3D. So in the background's blurry, the foreground is not. And then you have the contrast of lines as well, and the other. With this 3D aspect, we also have contrast of color. So for example, everything else is kind of bluish and purple, and he is yellow. So because the brushstroke is high in texture, it's going to be quite difficult to kind of create the contrast of texture. That's my difficulty with the painterly effect. So we're going to have to think about, okay, so if we have a problem with texture, how else would we bring out the contrast?
So for this, I would actually reduce, like where you made your brush strokes in the background and your furniture bigger, I would actually make them very, very small so that they become almost like a very fine texture, right?
Okay.
So they almost, I would do that, because
All
then otherwise, like he's getting lost in all those brush strokes, right? Like that's what I would do.
Small like this?
Yeah, I would even go, I mean, you're going to want to bring it all the way across, aren't you? Because you've got like, see how you've got on the right? Oh, yeah, there. if you want that texture throughout your whole scene. Otherwise, if you're going to have like, or I would do it so that what you've got on the right is what you have for your background, because it's more. Well, now you don't have it there anymore, but
you can also change the shot.
I think this is the beauty of art, that there's so many different ways to do this. I mean, there was a point where it was a transition across this. There was some very flat stuff on the right, and then it started to get more textured, and then even more textured as it came close to him, and it drew the eye in just by changing the texture. Right, so you've got color, you've got texture, sharpeners. I mean, like so many different ways to tell a story.
There we go.
So I would do it so that it's even smaller, so that his brushstroke, like the brush strokes on him are the largest brush strokes. Does that make sense?
Okay, I don't have that
No.
control built in though, unfortunately.
Okay,
I
so
think something that would maybe stand out to me is it does seem like the brightness of the background or the colors in the background and the character are roughly the same, and maybe that's what you're trying to do in the Paint and Leak project. I'm not sure, but I would maybe make the background a bit darker
There we go.
so we can really see the character and the chair rather than looking at all the same values of brightness.
Good. That's exactly what I needed to hear. That's one of the aspects. So here we go. We increase the contrast. He's now bright. The background is now dark. All right, what else can we do to improve this shot? So this is one shot. So for example, when we're using visual language, we can have the shot here framed on his head to show who he is and kind of what he's thinking and how he's doing. We can have the American shot, which is kind of showing him what he's doing, which he's about to sit down. We can then have kind of like a long shot, which shows his relationship. Whoops, that's a bit too long. Let me just zoom in a bit. We can have the long shot where it shows the concept of his chair, his relationship to the chair, which is important to kind of like show him, or show that he's kind of like lost here in the moment, or he's in the world. And that's how I would have the relate as a long shot. Or we could have an extremely long shot to have him like, okay, in relationship to the whole entire room, of where is this character inside the room. So those are the different types of basic cinematography shots. We can also have a cutaway. So for example, if I take a look at the chair, or just the chair, and also kind of rotate the camera, and maybe he's looking at something on the chair, on the arm of the chair. This is where I would like paint something which is another contrast to that particular color to bring it out as well, and also work with the color. But good call, nice. So now we've changed the texture of his head. His head is got more bright, scratchy brushstrokes. Meanwhile, the background is more blurry with a lot smaller brushstrokes. Got more light, as you recommend. And we also darken the background to kind of make it much more legible than before. So it's not too hard, right? Is it nice and is it clear and easy? You guys are really doing it well. What else could we do?
Yeah.
All right. So these are that's what visual language is as a summary. Visual language is basically that. It's just contrast. Make sure that people don't get distracted by too many things. Make sure that you have a focal point. Make sure that you have a hero. Make sure that you have contrast with a number of different things, and also that you have leading lines as well. So in this case, I don't have a lot of leading lines, but what I could do is I can get, for example, this background here, and I could bring it down a little bit so that the line, or the convergence line of the shape, kind of lines up with his head. So if I zoom in a little bit like this, I can use kind of this blue smudge to kind of point towards where I'm supposed to look at. So that's another method that you can, this is what you do. This is very similar to what you were doing, Slinc, to kind of bring out the attention of what I'm supposed to look at. So now if I hide the details, this blue streak and this other blue streak is now pointing towards his head. And that brings out that shot a little bit better. Make sense?
Yeah.
All right. Whew, cool. So that's the things I wanted to share today. Thanks for the time, I suppose. Now you have also a color contrast. Oh, Darren shared a link with a color contrast analyzer and also the Adobe Color Wheel. Sid also mentions long shots give you the where and the what. Close shots gives you the emotions, the thinking of the character. Correct. So Slinc, I have another question for you. Since this was more to complement your shot here, now that you can focus on the contrast of color, the contrast of luminance. So contrast to hue, contrast to luminance, and you can also have contrast of saturation as well. So for example, we lowered the luminance, but we could also, if we really wanted to, we could lower the saturation. So for example, in the background, I could make it less saturated than the actual character. Or if the character's in black and white or something, I can make it more saturated than the character, depending on that. This gives you a little bit of control. And typically, if things are in the shadow, you could use less saturation to kind of pop out the color as well. So you have contrast to hue, contrast to saturation, contrast to luminance to control your shot. And also the way that you control your light. Do you have any more ideas about this concept? I guess I can't use a lot of detail in these words. So Slinc, are you here still?
Yes.
All right, so you have a robot, right?
We for sure have.
Let's take a look at this robot, and let me just save this scene. Is there any particular thing you want me to take a look at when it comes to the robot?
Just play with the rig.
You've mentioned earlier, I think, that you're still learning how to rig?
I for sure I am.
I guess nobody
Still not enough.
nobody never ever stops learning how to rig. So what are your goals with the rig? What would you like the rig to do?
Existing.
Exist?
Yes. Its existing shall be acknowledged.
Like move around and be somebody?
Yes.
Alright. Okay, here he is. We have it in cycles. We'll just switch over to normal view. And here's the rig. Alright, so tell me. We have this eyeball, which opens.
The eyes are currently closed.
Okay, how do we open the eyes?
It has they're like those two big shapes.
Okay.
And if you move those.
Alright, nice. So these are the eyelids.
Yes.
And what does this do? Wow!
Aperture.
This is really cool. And I also like that the control changes as well. It's a really beautiful detail. How did you do this? How did you make the widget change?
Like, it is a triangle-ish shape. Then I arrayed that like on a, I arrayed it circularly. And then with shape keys and drivers, I changed like the position of the point, like, so it is also like looking like it is opening or closing the shutter.
Very cool. What is this material here in the outer ball?
It is very simple metal shaders. Now, you can like control all day. Wait.
It's designed for cycles, right?
It should work in EV2.
That's strange.
You moved like the eye. Yeah. Here it is.
There it is. This aperture concept is really good. Right, so this is actually an excellent rig. So which object is the actual widget?
It is under the bone shape collection.
Okay, here it is. So this is the shape that you have, and this has an array, and the array is controlled by an empty, and you have a shape key here, which is a driver, and the driver is driven by the iris. Well, I didn't know you could do it. Do you have a dependency cycle? No. Nice.
No.
Well done.
It just looks like if the bone is moving up, then it's like changing shape key.
And this bone has, in the bone settings, this is where you set the bone shape. Underneath viewport display, here it is in the plane. And this is the plane. I think that's a really cool concept. Like, not a lot of riggers do this. This little extra detail to kind of help animators is an excellent user experience. Well done. So what are your plans with this eyeball? What's left to do? What do you need to make?
There's like the game from Valve, like aperture desk job. And this robot is in that game, and I just really like the design of the robot and how it's like moving in the game.
Nice.
So I want to make it.
Well, it's modeled after the Eidos from the old Portal games.
No, it's from the newer Portal game.
Okay.
It's not from the Portal game. It's from the new game Aperture Desk Job, plays in the same universe.
Oh, nice. I haven't played those games yet.
Yes, the Portal games are great.
Yes, Aperture Science. Oh, well done. My only concern though, as an animator though, is I would probably add a blinking control, which is kind of like an arrow that you would have here on the side, and when I press the arrow, this would move down. Both of the eyelids would rotate to like close. So I would probably add that control using a couple of not drivers, but like constraints, so that I can individual regions rotate each of the eyeballs. Also, what I would do is I would inverse the orientation of this bone, so that if I was rotating in local space based on the individual region, if I rotated on X, it would open the eye, and if I rotated the other way, it would close the eye. But right now, both of the eyes are moving in the same direction.
Yeah.
So I'll just add a little bit more control to that. Right now it's perfectly fine, but I'll probably just inverse that bone so that the rotation would go the other way when I rotate both of them in one direction instead of doing this. What other little details were there? But everything else is good. Quite nice. Mechanical rigging is very fun. And you did really good with the blades as well. How did
it's like made geonodes.
Alright, so how did you show the geonodes here?
It is not that complicated, I think.
You have a rotate instances, you instance on the points based on a mesh circle, and you're aligning it on the normal.
Yes. And then one rotation axis is driven by a driver.
Z here, right? The Z one?
Yes.
Where does the driver go to?
To the
Goes
same
to the
bone.
iris, the same Y location in the iris.
Yes.
Very nice. And here in the modifier stack, the instance is the actual object itself, right? Which is this object, the blade.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like you just did you practically built a radial array and defined its rotation based on the blades of a driver. Clever.
Yes.
And you can change how many blades you want.
For sure I can. As many ones as you want.
Man, this is a great setup. Well done. Can't wait to see you do some animation.
Yeah.
All right, so that's it for today, guys. This has been practically... It's going to be a short one today, since last week was an hour and a half. So I'm not going to indebt you guys with more time here. I just wanted to share the knowledge. I hope it was interesting. Though, to finish, I will give you a quick little update of the Painterly project, if you guys are interested.
Yeah.
All right, Slinc, let's do it. So lately, I have been working on world building. So I've finished creating the world shot scripts based on 13 different songs. So by the end of April, there's going to be an actual launch for the music by DJ Unknown. And each song has a short little story. So last week, the week before I think it was, I showed a little bit about the writing process last week. And I have written 13 different scripts. They are relatively short. They're usually 1 page long because the songs are either 1 minute to 2 minutes, and it's based on hopefully mostly looped animation. But I've written the shot script so that I have my shots with a general description. I have what the cameras are going to do, what's in each single shot, and I have finished all of the songs. So each song has its own part of the city, and it's all ready to pretty much be set to the animatic now. So I'm pretty excited about this because now I have an actual story to tell. I have a message. So now I got the message, and my next topic now is to create the animatics per shot in the 3D space with establishing my focal point per shot to help me communicate the message. And then I can start doing what you guys were helping me to do just now. Focus on the color, focus on the texture contrast, the color contrast, the shape language contrast, the rhythm contrast, the direction contrasts, and the different things like that to help explain this message. Should be really fun, hopefully. Other things that I've been working on in the Painterly project as well is I've started creating an actual character, which I've mentioned earlier, and also started working on finishing up, also doing more contrast colors, but this is kind of old news. So the latest news is album art. So with that, we started creating some album art for the actual project, working on thumbnails for kind of like a vinyl album art or digital downloads, where I took the actual workshop and we started working with the actual layout and developing some concepts. It's still very noisy, so it almost looks like graffiti because I haven't implemented absolutely everything we need to get the work done. But we've created the album art in 4K, which I have here. Just give me a moment to load it. The song art. The album art. So here it is. So finally we've finished with this piece for the next album. And we've got generally the whole thing ready and going. Kind of a fun little piece to kind of give the general idea of what the album is about. So we've got the album art for the album, and we also have 2 songs which are coming out soon. They haven't been announced yet, so I can't show these in great detail, but I can show you the general images here. So for example, here's the render where I took the concept, a slightly more work in progress concept of like an old coffee paper or a notebook. I took the grease pencil, I took the Painterly, and I composited them, like he's painting in some sketches of these robot parts as part of the image. And they turned out quite nice, actually. I really enjoyed finishing the robot, making it more painterly, working out the grease pencil, working out the line art design, and also learning how to composite it onto some paper that I created, along with the lens effects. So we've got song art, we've got album art, we've got a whole bunch of city props and assets. So if we take a look, I've been working on improving the concept of the city. So there was an issue with the legibility of the architecture, which is basically this. I don't know what this is, but this, like some windows in a building, maybe is a little bit more recognizable to help with the texture design and the actual concept of the shape of different types of pieces of architecture in the cyberpunk world. I also have developed an actual map and a concept of where does everybody go, how does the story go, where does which part of the city has which part of the world, and in general it's going to be quite a fun, detailed project to reveal when it's done. And on top of that, I've also done a lot of modeling concerning assets for the actual world, like adapting pieces of the city like a forklift, just different things to decorate the street, shop fronts and things like that. Obviously, when it comes to creating the shots, this is going to be very subjective to what I actually do show in the world. So I'm going to have to, these would be, unlike normal 3D where you create, or game asset production where you create an entire world and the whole world is detailed, this has a kind of an abstraction where I have to select and choose what I show at a time. Include, for example, characters or the hero asset of the 4 pillars that I showed you earlier by Marco. So more and more pieces, more and more Lego blocks to the actual world using the asset browser and also collections. So I'm not using mesh data, I'm using collection data because it gives me instances. And with that, I'm also using an asset snapshot add-on, which allows me to generate a thumbnail for the collection with a single click, which I think is indispensable when it comes to asset management, because thumbnails are painful and the Blender ones, the default Blender ones, do not work for collections yet. So in the future, hopefully that comes, but I've had to work around using that add-on. So in general, the project is progressing.
What add-on did you say you used to get a collection thumbnail?
It's called Asset Snapshot.
All right, thank you.
Let me just dig it up and I'll give you a link. It is indispensable. I think it's one of the most important add-ons for the asset browser today. There it is right now. So let me just link that to you. You can find it in the Q&A and critique chat at the moment. So that's the summary for the project. Thank you guys for the good tips and the help with working on the Painterly. You guys definitely understand what it's about. Applying that to 3D is fun because 3D gives you all the tools you need to develop contrast, to capture the intention, to use direction, to also work on the concept of a focal point and having a message, and then from that you understand visual grammar. So hopefully that concludes what we were talking about last week in a more of a minimal way. It also helps you open up some doors to help you improve your art, hopefully. Also with the Painterly project as well was going to help me a lot. And thanks for hanging out till the end. And this is the Q&A today. I'll see you guys same time.
Thank you.
Next week. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, Trace.
Hello.
Thank you.